poor delivery pulled up to the mansion on an old Harley-Davidson. The millionaire couldn't take the doorbell rang. Sharp, cutting through the calm afternoon silence. From the second floor came Bianca's muffled voice. "Get that for me, Johnny. I'm in the shower." He was sitting in one of the armchairs in the library and closed his book with a trace of restrained irritation. It wasn't that answering the door was a problem, nothing like that. The annoyance was more about being interrupted than the act itself. He stood up slowly, adjusted his watch, and walked through the wide, quiet hallways of the house. The sound of his footsteps echoed on the polished wooden floor. Johnny Albuquerque, 32 years old, heir to a chain of hotels spread across the United States, wasn't exactly the stereotype of a bored man, but lately he carried that weight with a certain ease. Tall, broad-shouldered, and always alert, he had a firm posture and a kind of presence that made people notice him, even in silence. Even surrounded by artwork, antique furniture, and the spectacular view of the valley, there was something distant about him. When he opened the front door, the first thing he noticed was the warm, rich aroma of homemade food. Then he saw the motorcycle. Not just any bike, but a classic Harley-Davidson, faded black paint, worn chrome, still imposing. It sat in front of the mansion like a materialized memory of the past. That's when she took off her helmet. "Delivery for Bianca Albuquerque," the girl said with a slight smile. Her dark hair was tied in a low ponytail, with a few loose strands framing her face. She wore a weathered leather jacket and jeans, her boots marked by dried mud and heavy use. She looked young, but there was something in her eyes, a quiet firmness, the kind that comes from carrying too much too soon. Johnny looked at the motorcycle a second longer than he should have. "Yeah, I'll take it," he replied, accepting the bag. "The fresh juice is separate. Rice, beans, braised beef, and farofa. Still warm," she added, "professional but not cold." He nodded, still taking in the sight of the Harley. His eyes moved over the details, the old weld on the exhaust, the hand reupholstered seat, the marks of time. "That model, is it a 72? He guessed. 69, she replied, adjusting the strap of her backpack on her shoulder. "It was my grandpa's." Johnny cleared his throat, looking away. "My dad and I started restoring one just like it. It's been sitting in the garage since he..." He stopped short of finishing the sentence. She nodded in respect, didn't ask questions. "Well, thanks for the delivery." "You're welcome." Monica put her helmet back on with a smooth, practiced motion. She mounted the motorcycle like greeting an old friend. She started the engine, and the throaty roar filled the air, the kind of sound Johnny hadn't heard in years, but that was etched somewhere in his memory. He stood there even after she turned down the street and disappeared from sight. He was still holding the bag, momentarily forgetting the smell of the food. He walked back inside without saying a word. Bianca was in the kitchen, wrapped in a towel, looking at her phone. Still warm. He just set the bag on the counter and walked out without answering. He went straight upstairs, down the hall to the far end, and unlocked the door to the inner garage, the one he hadn't opened in a long time. Light streamed in through the dusty windows in narrow beams. There, under a grey sheet, was the bike, theirs. He pulled off the cover gently. The metal still carried the scent of the old workshop, the smell of glue, grease, and time. He touched the handlebar with his fingertips. It felt like reuniting with an old friend you no longer speak to. The image of Monica on her motorcycle came back with intensity. The ease with which she rode, the way she talked about her grandfather, about restoring the bike. There was something there, something that slipped past his efforts to keep everything under control. That night he didn't eat dinner, didn't turn on the TV. He sat in the garage with a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the motorcycle for hours, as if trying to find in the steel and dust an answer he had long stopped searching for. The phone buzzed 5 times before Monica could reach it among the tools on the workbench. "Delivery to Stone Mill Drive, number 38. Family combo, extra fries." She read it out loud to herself as she typed in the confirmation. A sound from the other room broke her focus. It was her younger brother Alex trying to reach the cereal on the kitchen shelf. "I told you to wait, Alex," she shouted, but her voice sounded more worried than angry. She wiped her hands on her t-shirt and ran over. The 8-year-old boy, with wide, curious eyes, smiled like he hadn't done anything wrong. "I just wanted to see if we had the chocolate kind." "You're having cornflakes, and you're going to school on time," she said, pouring milk and packing his lunch at the same time. The house was small, cramped and poorly insulated from city noise, but it was always clean and organized, a direct reflection of Monica's discipline. She and Alex had been on their own for 3 years. After their mother disappeared and their father went to prison, Monica didn't have time to fall apart. She'd worked at the restaurant since she was 17, started in the kitchen, but preferred the street, the wind on her face, the sound of the bike, even under the blazing sun or pouring rain. The Harley had been a gift from her grandfather, not in words. He'd left it forgotten in the garage, waiting. Monica was the one who cleaned it, took it apart, studied tutorials, scavenged parts from junkyards. It was her anchor and her freedom. She left the house with a backpack full of deliveries, helmet hooked over her arm, and her phone buzzing with the next stops. Most delivery riders used light scooters, electric bikes or e-bikes, but she chose to do it differently. There was something about the Harley that was more than just transportation. It was history. It was memory. It was everything she had that no one could take away. That afternoon, when she got the order for Bianca Albuquerque, she didn't even recognize the address. But when she arrived at the mansion, she felt the weight of the man's gaze as he received the food. It wasn't the look of disdain. It was the look of recognition. As she accelerated back onto the road, something stirred inside her. Not the kind of feeling she usually allowed to grow, but enough to linger in her memory. A look, a name, a forgotten garage. The motorcycle's rumble echoed through the mansion's entryway before Johnny even realized he had placed the order. He'd been distracted, sitting in the glass room beside the kitchen, his gaze lost somewhere between the pine trees outside and the light drizzle beginning to dot the lawn. He had typed in the order on the app, almost without thinking, same dish, same restaurant. Almost like a reflex. The system confirmed delivery in 30 minutes, and he wasn't surprised to feel a kind of quiet anticipation. When the familiar sound of the engine approached, his body reacted without warning. He dropped the TV remote, walked to the hall and opened the door a second before the doorbell rang. Monica stood there, helmet still in her hands and her face lightly damp from the drizzle. Her hair, tied back simply, was already starting to come loose. "Same as yesterday," she said, handing over the bag with the same care. "I know," he replied, steady, but with a tone softer than usual. She glanced up at the heavy sky. The rain was starting to come down harder. "Looks like it's picking up," she said, already preparing to head down the steps. "Come in," Johnny said without thinking too much. "Wait it out." She hesitated, looked at the bike, looked at him. For a moment, it seemed like she might decline, but then she gave a small nod. Just for a bit. They stepped inside. The sound of rain grew louder against the house's glass panes. Monica set her helmet on a side table and followed Johnny to the inner garage. As they entered, the soft light revealed the motorcycle covered by a grey tarp, the same one from the day before. "Is that it?" she asked, already recognizing the shape. Johnny slowly pulled back the tarp. The Harley was there, still unfinished, parts disassembled and visibly left to time. "My dad and I started this project when I was a teenager. The idea was to build it together, little by little." He paused, staring at the bike with a heavy look. "He died before we could finish it. After that, I couldn't even touch it." Monica didn't say anything right away. She stepped closer to the motorcycle and ran her fingers along one side where the chipped paint exposed the old metal beneath. "You kept it well," she said, not forcing empathy, just acknowledging. "A lot of times when pain comes with memory, we'd rather hide it. But some things don't go away just because we cover them up." The words hung in the air for a few seconds. Johnny leaned against the tool bench, arms crossed. "And yours? The one you ride? It looks like it's got a story." Monica gave a slight smile. "It was my grandfather's. When he passed, my grandmother wanted to sell it, but I asked to keep it. It didn't run, was in terrible shape. Took me almost a year to fix it. Every bolt, every part. Just YouTube videos and patience. And why? Why put that much effort into an old bike? She thought for a moment before answering. The rain outside tapped against the roof like a continuous melody. Because when you lose someone you truly loved, you don't want to accept that everything ends there. Restoring that bike was like sitting with my grandpa again, like hearing him say, "Hand me the wrench," or "That part doesn't fit like that." It was my way of holding on. Johnny nodded slowly. He didn't say anything, but his eyes revealed that her words had struck something deep. "And how do you manage it all? Working deliveries, taking care of your brother, keeping up the bike?" Monica shrugged. "I don't think about it too much. I do what needs to be done. Alex needs me. I have to keep going. Simple as that." "You seem tired." "I am. But there's worse than being tired. It's feeling stuck." The honesty in her voice caught Johnny off guard. There was something about the way Monica spoke, direct but not confrontational, that pulled him out of autopilot. "Aren't you cold?" he asked, walking to a cabinet. He grabbed a light blanket and tossed it over a chair. "I'm fine. Thanks." They sat for a few minutes. Johnny picked up the bag and opened it, offering her some of the meal. "Want to share?" "Are you offering the food you only ordered to see me again?" He smiled, for the first time in a long time. "Maybe." She accepted. They ate right there, improvised, sharing plastic utensils and laughing over stories that started light, but gained weight as they went on. When the rain finally began to ease, Monica stood. "I think I can head out now. Still got about 4 more deliveries." Johnny walked her to the door. "Let me know if you need help with the bike. I might have a few tools you don't." "I wouldn't doubt it. This house probably has a rocket stashed in the basement." "Just tools, and maybe a better shelter next time." She put on her helmet and climbed onto the bike, but before taking off she looked back over her shoulder. "Thanks for the conversation." And then she was gone, once again leaving behind the deep rumble of the engine, and a feeling Johnny couldn't quite name, but that stayed with him, strong, persistent, and strangely good. Her phone buzzed in the back pocket of her jeans as Monica balanced a bag holding 3 meal boxes and a 2-liter soda. She carefully set everything down on the seat of the bike, pulled out the phone and read the cracked screen. "New delivery, 12th Street, commercial building, 5th floor. Estimated time, 27 minutes. "Damn," she muttered, glancing up at the cloudy sky. The morning had barely started, and the orders were already piling up. With the cold wind and rain forecasted for later in the day, customers were less inclined to leave home, which meant more work for her, and that also meant more money. But her body was already feeling it. The cold crept through the sleeves of her jacket, and her hands ached even inside the gloves. That Tuesday, Monica had already made 5 deliveries before 10 a.m. The routine was always the same. She woke up at 5:30, made breakfast for Alex, helped him with his uniform, checked his backpack, and dropped him off at school on her way to the restaurant. The bike was her inseparable partner, despite recent sputters and a front brake part that desperately needed replacing. After school, Alex went straight to Mrs. Beatrice's apartment, neighbor from 203, where he stayed until Monica finished her shift. To everyone else, she looked like she had everything under control, and she did, but no one saw the moments when she cried in the bathroom after a rough day or the constant nausea caused by sleepless nights and unrelenting worries. That day in particular, she was more exhausted than usual. Her brother had woken up with a fever during the night, and she'd spent the early hours trying to bring it down with cold towels and borrowed medicine from the neighbor. Now, helmet strapped on again, she turned the key in the ignition. The bike took a few seconds to respond. When the engine finally roared, she let out a deep sigh. That familiar sound was the only thing that still gave her a sense of control. She headed out for the next deliveries without much time to think. But between one drop-off and the next, memories of the previous afternoon with Johnny slipped into her mind uninvited. There was something about the way that man spoke, about his father, the way he looked at the motorcycle with an almost reverent respect. He wasn't like other men who tried to talk to her just to impress. He wasn't trying at all. He just was. She skipped lunch. When she finally stopped in a corner of the town square to scarf down a cold chicken croquette and sip lukewarm juice, she checked her phone for messages. 2 notifications from the restaurant. More deliveries. But there was another one too. Order confirmed. Johnny Albuquerque. Same meal. She couldn't hold back a smile. By late afternoon, the forecast proved true. The rain came down hard and without warning, and the sky darkened too quickly for the hour. Monica was already on the road back to the mansion, the food bag protected under a plastic cover. With each turn, the wind seemed to try and knock her over. When she stopped in front of the gate, her fingers were nearly numb. The door opened before she could even climb the steps. Johnny was there again, this time wearing a plain dark sweater and holding a towel. "You're going to catch pneumonia like this," he said, his voice firm but not scolding. She removed her helmet and let out a short laugh. "Did you order the family combo again? Or did you just want to see me soaking wet?" "Both, but the first one is the official reason. The food's intact, I'm not." He walked around to the entrance and guided her inside, without asking if she wanted to come in. He closed the door behind them and led her straight to the inner garage, where he had set up a small space with 2 chairs and a space heater warming the room. "This place is starting to look like a workshop," she said, taking off her soaked jacket, "or a shelter for delivery riders in distress." He took the food bag, placed it on the workbench, and served the meal on ceramic plates. It felt strange, yet somehow natural. They shared a meal like old friends. "Is your brother feeling better?" Johnny asked, eating slowly. She looked at him, surprised. "How do you know?" "You mentioned yesterday he wasn't doing too well." She nodded, touched that he remembered. "He is. Slept well last night, but he still needs antibiotics. I have to get a prescription, and the doctor only has an opening on Thursday." He didn't offer money. He didn't offer a ride. He just listened, really listened. "That must be tough." "It is, but it's what I've got." They sat in silence for a while. The warm food did more than just heat the body. Their presence was starting to fill spaces neither of them had known were empty. "Have you ever thought about doing something else?" he asked, genuinely curious. She set down her fork and looked at him. "I have, but thinking doesn't pay the bills. And I've got my brother. I can't just drop everything to study or intern at a garage. And honestly, I don't regret it. I don't have time for regret." "It's not regret," Johnny said softly. "It's just not forgetting about yourself in the middle of everything." Monica looked away, poking at the rice with her fork. "And to see you." She paused for a second at the garage door, helmet in hand. "I'll see you around, Johnny." And then she was gone. This time, he didn't just hear the sound of the engine. He felt it, on his skin, in his chest, in that space between the memory of his father and something new that had started to grow, quietly. Johnny's phone vibrated insistently on the rustic wooden desk in his office, but he ignored it. He was hunched over the workbench in the garage, hands greasy, a metal part between his fingers. The motorcycle, the old Harley that had sat untouched for years, no longer looked like a dead monument. Its tank was polished, part of the engine disassembled, and a toolbox lay open beside it. He didn't know much about mechanics, just the basics he'd picked up from his dad as a teenager, not enough to go solo. Still, ever since Monica's visit, something had shifted. It was as if, by pulling off that grey cover, he'd also unearthed a piece of himself. In the center of the bench sat an envelope. Inside was a printed list of compatible parts, store names, and handwritten notes. Monica had left it there, without fanfare. When she came by the day before, she'd mentioned the damaged carburetor and the state of the electrical system. After they ate, she quietly grabbed a piece of paper and jotted down suggestions with the ease of someone who understood not just the parts, but also the pain behind them. That morning, Johnny had woken up wanting to tinker. Alone, still clumsy, but with a sincere urge to try. It was progress, small, but his. The phone notification was a reminder from the restaurant. "Your order is on the way." He smiled to himself, wiping his hands on an old towel. For the 3rd time that week, he'd ordered the same meal. But this time the food was the least important part. Monica parked her motorcycle in front of the mansion, her hair in a makeshift bun under the helmet, her jacket still damp from a sudden drizzle. She cut the engine, slung off her backpack and adjusted the bag. As she climbed the front steps, the door was already open. "Didn't even have to ring the bell this time," she said, raising her eyebrows. "I saw you coming on the camera," Johnny replied, leaning against the doorframe with a grease-stained rag over his shoulder. "I was in the garage. Working on the bike?" "Trying to. That list you gave me helped more than you know." She smiled and stepped inside with ease. The two walked side by side to the inner garage. Monica took off her jacket, rolled up the sleeves of her black t-shirt, and approached the bike with the care of someone who knows every inch of that kind of machine. "Did you get the piston loose?" "Not yet. Been soaking it in penetrating oil." "Can I try?" "Of course." She crouched beside the motorcycle, grabbed one of the wrenches from the bench, and got to work while Johnny watched. The way she moved, confident and precise, showed skill. Her small hands were quick, and the way she furrowed her brow in concentration made it clear she knew exactly what she was doing. "Where'd you learn all this?" "Started with my grandfather. Then it was all trial and error. Videos, reading, messing up, trying again. When you don't have money, you learn because you have to." "Ever think about working in a real garage?" "I have, but no one hires a woman without a certificate, especially someone young, no connections, no recommendations. What if you had the chance?" She paused, looked at him. "I don't have time to dream much, Johnny. There's Alex, school, doctors, food on the table. Life pushes hard, you know. You learn not to let yourself imagine too far ahead. You're still really young. That doesn't stop time from weighing on you." The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy, with things that didn't need to be said. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a few minutes. "Sure." "Why'd you order the same meal again today?" He looked at her with a half smile, but his eyes said more than his face let on. "Because it reminds me of lunch with my dad. The braised beef, the beans, the smell. We used to eat that every Sunday after working on the bike." She nodded, understanding. "Carmen's food has that power. It's mom food." "You knew her?" "I worked in the kitchen with her for a while before I started doing deliveries. She's the one who really taught me how to cook and how to listen in silence." "Listen to what?" "Other people's pain." Her hands were now covered in grease. Johnny grabbed a clean towel and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed for a second, quick, but enough to send a small jolt that neither of them mentioned. She looked at her watch. "I gotta go. Alex gets out of school in an hour." "Want a ride? On the Harley?" "Never. She'd kill me out of jealousy." Johnny laughed, a real one. "I meant in my car. I meant on my bike." She grabbed her helmet, tied her hair back again, and threw on her jacket. "Will there be a delivery tomorrow?" he asked. "If it rains again, probably. But if you want another excuse to see me, just order number 4. I'm not sure if it's the food I'm hooked on, or the person who brings it. Better not find out. Some things are better when left a mystery." And she left. He stood there, still holding the towel. His bike was only halfway put back together, but his chest felt like it was slowly being rebuilt, one part at a time, one conversation at a time. And she, without meaning to, was the only person who somehow fit where there had only been emptiness. The muffled sound of the doorbell wasn't what caught Johnny's attention that morning. It was the sharp, insistent honk coming from the garage entrance, 2 short blasts, one long. A pattern he didn't recognize, but for some reason, it pulled him away from what he was doing and toward the gate. Monica was there, not with a delivery bag and not with her usual helmet in hand. She wore dark pants stained with oil and a simple t-shirt under a worn denim jacket. Tucked under her arm was a cardboard box. "Brought you a surprise," she said bluntly as he approached. "You don't exactly strike me as the cake and flowers type," he replied, opening the gate. "No cake, no flowers, but I might be able to save your carburetor," she said, lifting the box and walking in without waiting for an invitation. In the garage, Monica pulled up one of the chairs, tossed the box onto the workbench and opened it with ease. Inside were old parts, some new, others clearly repurposed, all meticulously organized. "Where'd you get all this?" Johnny asked, genuinely surprised. "Bianca's dad's junk pile, and a few parts I picked up at a scrapyard in Brooklyn. I've got my contacts," she said, a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. He watched as she moved through the garage like it belonged to her. The way she sorted through the parts, the way she talked about the connections and showed the proper fits. It wasn't just knowledge, it was intimacy with the world she inhabited. "How's Alex?" he asked more softly, stepping closer. Monica hesitated a moment before answering. "He's okay as he can be. Yesterday he came home with his uniform torn, said he got pushed during recess." The way she said held a quiet, cold anger. Not the loud kind. It was the type that grows inward like plant poison. Johnny recognized it instantly. Did he say who did it? Said he doesn't remember, but he always remembers. He just doesn't want me going down there to make a scene. She paused, took a deep breath and went on. "The thing is, this has been going on for weeks. The school staff pretends they don't see it. They don't want trouble with the other boys' parents." Johnny ran a hand over his chin, thoughtful. "So what are you going to do?" "What I always do, take care of it. Patch the uniform, cover the bruises with ointment, tell him it'll pass." She looked at him, raw and honest. "The world's not going to stop being unfair just because I complain. But I can teach Alex not to stay silent, even when he's scared." He nodded, respecting the silence that followed. "You ever think about taking him out of that school?" "I have. But good schools cost money. And the better public ones only take students who live in the area. And we don't live in the area. And getting a place there, well, that's another problem entirely." Monica turned back to the motorcycle parts. Her hands were steady, but her gaze was distant. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Johnny asked, voice lower now. "Because you're not responsible for my problems, and I don't want to be the kind of person who shows up just to get something. You're not that kind of person. I'd know." She stopped what she was doing and looked at him. For the first time, there was a moment between them without any shields, no clipped sentences, no protective sarcasm, just truth. "I don't need you to fix things for me, Johnny. I just need you to understand that there's no room in my life for leftovers or waste." "Do I seem like waste to you?" She smiled, shaking her head. "You seem like someone who doesn't realize the weight he's carrying, but still carries it." He stepped closer, lightly touching her shoulder. There was no tension, no hesitation. It was a clean, quiet touch, full of everything unspoken. "If you want, I could go with you to the school, talk to the principal, just as someone who cares." Monica lowered her eyes, picked up a part, turned it between her fingers. "I'll think about it." They stayed there for a few more hours, assembling parts, sharing tools, and letting silences settle between them. The connection grew with the same natural rhythm as the motorcycle taking shape, slow, unforced, built with care and presence. Before she left, Monica paused at the garage entrance. Helmet in hand, she looked at him over her shoulder. "Thanks for not treating me like someone who needs saving." Johnny answered with nothing but his gaze, steady, grounded, real. And then she was gone, leaving behind the certainty that even among so many broken pieces, there was someone willing to rebuild, slowly, with no rush, no promises, just truth. The iron gate let out a soft creak as it opened, like an omen that routine was about to be broken again. Johnny was in the garage adjusting a belt on the bike when he heard the short, quick honk. He recognized it instantly. Monica parked the Harley a little farther than usual, took off her helmet with a sharp motion, and tied her hair into a messy bun. Her face looked worn. The usual playful spark wasn't there, and neither was the corner smile. He dropped the tool and walked toward her slowly. Did something happen? She didn't answer right away, lowered her eyes, took a deep breath, and then said, straight to the point, "The social worker showed up at my place this morning." Johnny's heart jolted. "Why?" "The school reported us. They say Alex has been showing signs of neglect, marks on his arms, absences, trouble focusing. That's ridiculous." "It is. But it happens," she said, stuffing her hands in her jacket pockets. "A new neighbor saw him alone in the hallway and thought it was odd. Made a call, you can imagine the rest. They want to take custody. Not yet, but they gave me a warning. Said they'll be keeping a closer eye. Those polite words that mean one wrong move and we take what's left of you." The silence between them was heavy. Johnny felt his blood boil, but he kept his composure. He stepped closer, voice lower. "You're not alone." Monica looked up straight into his eyes. "I am, Johnny. That's what you don't get. I wake up every day with the feeling that one mistake could cost me everything. You don't know what that's like." "No, I don't. But I know I don't want to see you carrying it by yourself." She turned her back, facing the bike like she needed air. "I've heard that speech before. It comes with good intentions, but when things get rough, I'm the one who ends up broken." He didn't argue, didn't try to convince her, didn't insist. He just walked over to the workbench, grabbed a clean rag and handed it to her. "Sit down, just stay here with me today." She hesitated, then sat. Time passed slowly. They sat side by side in silence, the sound of tools filling the space. Monica worked on a smaller piece of the ignition system, her eyes focused, her mind elsewhere. "When I was a kid, my dad used to say that the small parts were the most important," she murmured, "because if one spring fails, everything locks up." "Your dad knew mechanics, not bikes, but he was an expert at breaking things from the inside." Johnny stayed silent. She had never talked about her father that way, not so much what he did, but what he caused. "He used to hit you?" She nodded. "No drama. No need to explain more." "One day my mom ran off with us. We spent months in shelters, moving from city to city, but in the end, she went back, and I kept getting smaller and smaller until only Alex was left. When she disappeared for good, it felt like I had to make up for everything." She turned the screwdriver in her hands, voice low. "Sometimes I wake up and think, am I messing him up too? Is he going to grow up and hate me the same way?" Johnny turned toward her, leaning on the workbench, eyes locked on hers. "He's not going to hate you. He'll understand. Maybe not now. Maybe it'll hurt. But one day, he'll understand that everything he had was because you stayed." She closed her eyes, holding back the emotion. She didn't cry, but the subtle tremble in her hand said more than any words could. "Now I have to work twice as hard, make it look like everything's perfect, like I've got it all under control." "And if you don't?" "Then they take him from me." Johnny stood, ran a hand through his hair, turned his back for a second, then turned back to her. "I have space here, way more than I need. I have resources, a support network, people I trust." "No." She cut him off firmly. "I knew you were going to say that. It's not charity, Monica. But it feels like it, like you're trying to fit me into your perfect life so you can fix my mess." "You think my life is perfect?" "Compared to mine, it's a 5-star hotel with breakfast included." He stepped closer, voice low, intense. "My house is big, Monica, but it's empty. I haven't woken up with purpose in years, and I'm not saying this to compete over pain or to convince you. I just want you to understand, if you need me, I'm here. Not as a millionaire, as a man." The silence deepened. She looked down, took a breath, then said, "Promise me something." "Anything." "If one day I say I can't anymore, then I'm leaving with Alex. You won't try to stop me." He nodded, serious. "I don't want to hold you back, Monica. I just want to remind you that you have a choice." She stayed a few more minutes, then grabbed her helmet, tied her hair with her fingers like she always did. But before leaving, she looked at him with a weariness that wasn't physical. "I've got a meeting with the principal tomorrow. I'm going alone, but if it goes bad, maybe I'll take your help. I'll be here." She left without another word, but Johnny kept staring at the door long after she was gone, as if trying to follow each step, each burden, each unspoken silence with his eyes. And in that moment, more than ever, he realized that loving someone for real meant accepting even what they couldn't give. And staying anyway. The sharp buzz of the phone vibrating against the metal workbench was the first sound to break the morning silence. Johnny ignored it. He was kneeling beside the motorcycle, finishing the installation of a new chain. Finally in place thanks to the instructions Monica had left days earlier. The task was mechanical, almost automatic, but his mind was elsewhere. The phone buzzed again. This time he stood, wiped his hands on a cotton rag and checked the screen. A single short message. It happened. Nothing more, no context. But he knew exactly what it meant. He climbed the garage stairs, crossed the kitchen and grabbed his car keys without thinking. His movements carried no hesitation, no questions, only a dull urgency pounding in his chest like a silent alarm. The school was small and grey, with peeling walls and a patchy lawn out front. He parked across the street and crossed quickly. Monica was sitting on a concrete bench by the entrance, helmet in her lap, eyes locked on a point that didn't exist. "You came," she said, not surprised. "You called." She looked at him. Her face was pale, jaw clenched. Alex defended himself. One of the boys tried to push him during recess. This time, he didn't let it happen. He fought back. And he kicked the kid, hard. The boy fell and hit his head. "He's in the hospital for observation." "Is he okay?" "He is, but the school called the social worker, again. They're using the previous report to say the home environment is," she made air quotes, "unstable." Johnny sat beside her. "And Alex?" "He's inside with a school counselor, shaking, not from fear, from shame." She ran her hands down her face, exhausted. "I did the right thing, Johnny. I taught him not to accept being pushed around, to fight back, to not bow his head. And now they're saying he's the problem." Johnny took a deep breath. "I know people in child services. I could reach out, get you some legal backing. I don't want a lawyer. I don't want to look like some desperate woman trying to keep her son out of juvie. He's 8 years old, Johnny. 8. And living like he's 30. She turned toward him, anger flaring in her eyes. "You don't get it. You never will. Maybe not. But that doesn't mean I can't help." She stood abruptly. "I don't want help. I want peace. I want to sleep through the night without waking up afraid someone's going to take Alex from me because I bought the wrong medicine or ran out of food a day too soon. Then let me do something. Anything." She stood there for a few seconds, staring at him, fighting everything she had ever learned. Not to trust, not to rely on anyone, not to be saved. "The bike you and your dad restored," she began, abruptly shifting the subject with emotional force. "Is it done?" "Almost." "Why?" "Because mine broke down. End of shift yesterday. Chain snapped in the middle of the road. I was almost hit." He stood immediately. "Are you hurt?" "Just my pride, and maybe my back," she said with a tired smile. "But seriously, Johnny, I need to keep delivering. I can't stop." He looked at her firmly. "Mine's ready. It's your dad's bike. And yours was your grandfather's. You trusted me to restore it. Now it's my turn." She hesitated. "That changes everything. Only if you let it." The silence between them stretched, until the principal appeared at the door, calling Monica's name. "We'll talk later," she said, pointing a finger at Johnny. "I'll be wherever you need me to be." That night, Monica arrived at the garage with puffy eyes and a drained expression. Her brother was asleep on the back seat of Johnny's bike, clutching a small backpack. She got off slowly, with the careful movements of someone carrying the weight of the world and trying not to wake the fear. Johnny came out of the workshop, wiping his hands on his shirt, and walked toward her. "Hey, no talk. I just need a place for him to sleep. Tonight? Tomorrow we'll see." "All right. And don't look at me with pity." "I'm not. I'm looking at you with respect." She swallowed hard. She wanted to fight it, wanted to push away the kindness that felt too close. But in that moment, that look, that place, was all she and her brother had. Johnny opened the door to the house. He picked up Alex without saying a word. "Where should I put him?" he asked. "Close, somewhere I can hear him." He took the boy to one of the guest rooms, made the bed, fluffed the pillows. Monica stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step in or just say thank you. "I don't know what tomorrow will look like, Johnny." "Me neither. But tonight, you and Alex have a place to stay." She didn't answer. She walked into the room, sat on the edge of the bed, and gently took off her brother's shoes. The silence in the house felt strange to her, a silence of comfort, of safety. When she came back out, she found Johnny in the hallway, arms crossed. "That bike you restored, it's not just your dad's anymore, is it?" "No, it has more stories now than he ever imagined." "Then tomorrow show me how to start it, with pleasure." Monica went into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, stood there staring into nothing, then said, "I still don't trust promises. I don't make them either." And so they stayed, each in their own space in the same house, with the broken pieces slowly fitting back together, not like some magical fix, but like two lives, damaged, yes, learning to lean on each other. The smell of fresh coffee drifted up from the kitchen with a gentleness that felt almost affectionate. Monica stirred her spoon inside the white mug in slow, circular motions, staring at nothing in particular. She stood there barefoot, in an oversized sweatshirt with her hair pulled into a messy bun, but for once she wasn't in a hurry. It was rare. The house, for the first time in a long while, was quiet. Not the tense, hollow kind of quiet she knew too well. This was a full silence. A silence filled with presence, calm, a kind of peace she was still learning to accept. Alex appeared in the doorway, his eyes still sleepy, a blanket draped over his shoulders like a cape. He walked over to his sister wordlessly and rested his head against her waist. Monica responded by gently running her fingers through his hair, a soft, almost automatic gesture. It was routine now, but a new kind of routine. One where he woke up calm, where there was no rush to get dressed before answering the door for a social worker. A routine where, even though fear still lived in the depths of her eyes, there was finally room to breathe. In the living room, Johnny was finishing up sorting through a few papers on the coffee table. He was dressed simply, but with that quiet care he seemed to apply to everything. A cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dark pants, barefoot. His hair was still damp from the shower. He read a report from the garage with focus, though his eyes flicked toward the kitchen every time he heard footsteps. When Monica came in holding 2 mugs, he immediately set the paper down. "Coffee," she said, handing him one of the mugs. "Strong, no sugar, just how you like it." "You're learning my habits," he said, accepting the drink with a half smile. "Only the ones that don't involve stubbornness," she shot back, settling into the armchair across from him. They sipped the first few gulps in silence. The morning stretched gently, time moving with the lazy rhythm of 2 people who had earned their rest. "How's Alex?" Johnny asked. "He slept well, still nervous about the new school, but I think deep down he's excited." She took a sip, then added, "Last night he packed his backpack 3 times before bed." "Sounds about right. It's a fresh start." "Fresh starts scare me," she said, staring into a cup. "They're full of promises. And promises to me have always been preludes to disappointment. Is this a promise to you?" "I don't know yet. Maybe it's just a pause, a breath between storms." Johnny leaned back in the chair, not taking his eyes off her. "I didn't come to be your savior, Monica, or Alex's. I just don't want you to go through it all alone." She let out a soft laugh, not ironic, but almost disbelieving. "You're the only man who's ever said that to me without wanting something in return." "I do want something," he said, steady. "I want you to sleep well. I want him to grow up unafraid. I want you to walk through life one day without always feeling like your back has to be against the wall. That's not charity. It's just caring." Her gaze wavered. She looked out the window, then down at the floor. Took a deep breath. "We're not staying here forever, Johnny. We'll move on from this house. I know. And you'll go back to your life, your business, your events, your rich friends. Maybe. But none of that seems nearly as interesting as hearing your brother tell me he did a multiplication problem on his own today." She smiled despite herself. "I'm not the kind of woman who sits still. I knew that the day you got off that bike with Bianca's food and knocked me flat with nothing but the sound of that engine." She shook her head, laughing. "I didn't ask to be part of your life. And I didn't ask for you to fit into it so perfectly." The words lingered in the air, vibrating with more weight than anything else had that morning. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then she broke the silence. "My grandfather's bike. It's still at the shop. With the help from the Ray's garage crew, I think I can finish the repairs by next month. Some students are already asking to help." "It's your garage now," he corrected. "You and 20 kids who finally understand that grease on their hands can be a badge of pride, not shame. There are days I look at that place and think, That was Johnny's doing. I just funded it, Monica. You brought it to life. She stood, emptied her mug in the sink, and stood there for a moment with her back turned. You still sleep badly? He nodded. Less than before, but I still wake up thinking about what I didn't do when my dad died, and how long it took me to realize fixing a bike wouldn't fix his absence. Absence doesn't get fixed. You just learn to keep it company. He walked over, stopping close but without intruding on her space. I want to be that company, if you want that too. She slowly turned her face toward him and looked into his eyes. There was something there that wasn't just desire or shared struggle. It was something more grounded, more intimate, and because of that, more terrifying. I'm scared, she said. So am I. Just not enough to walk away. Alex appeared in the hallway, still groggy. I'm hungry, he said, rubbing his eyes. Monica knelt down and adjusted the collar of his sweatshirt. Egg sandwich okay? If there's ketchup, he replied, already grinning. Johnny watched, a boy who now asked for food without fear, a woman who could now respond with affection without planning to flee the next morning, and him, a man who finally understood the value of showing up, not owning. When Monica stood again, she looked at Johnny and said, maybe you're right. Maybe this is more than just a pause. Maybe. But just maybe. And that's already enough. Later that afternoon on the back porch with Alex playing in the yard, Monica sat beside Johnny. The sky was clear, a rare deep blue, and the breeze carried the smell of cut grass and coffee. I still don't believe in happy endings, she confessed, her feet resting on the wooden boards. Neither do I, but I believe in honest beginnings. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and there in the quiet of that afternoon, with no grand promises or declarations, just the steady presence of one another, they built something that finally made sense. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real life. And it was enough. Hear what it meant to you. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. This is really important for the channel. Really important. And if you're ready for another story of love and hope, click the first card or the second one to watch the full playlist. See you there.